Hey peoples of indeterminate origin or identity. This is The Constant Show where I talk about movies excessively, and I am Constant, a hyperactive sloth forever trapped in an existential crisis. This week's movie is Beneath, which is available on Hulu if you would like to watch it. I somewhat recommend it. We'll get into it. I'll have timestamps in the comments below as per usual. So this movie starts with Nonprofit, featured here, having this vision of Brother Lover, featured here. She's in this lake as a fish monster approaches her, and he sees this, but she's acting like it's a Girls Gone Wild commercial. She's just like, woo! As the fish approaches, like Jaws behind her. In his room, there's this article that talks about the lake monster, and it's got like parts of it underlined in red, as though he's some kind of lake monster detective. So at this point, it's pretty clear to us as a viewing audience that he knows about the lake monster. I think the only way they could have been more blatant with it is if they gave him a t-shirt that said, hey, I know about the lake monster. Then we get to meet the rest of the crew in the car. There's Wrist Filmographer, who's pretty much just annoying and unhelpful the entire time. That's his entire character arc. There's Jock number 1 and Jock number 2. They're pretty similar. The only difference is that one of them is more murdery and one of them is dating Brother Lover. If you casted them as twins, I wouldn't be able to tell which one of them was playing a different character for a large part of the movie. The last two members of our crew are Red Shirt and Nonprofit. I call him Nonprofit because he had the vision that this was going to happen, and as you can tell, since there's still a movie, it is happening. Wrist Filmographer talks to Brother Lover about his movie, which it's just like 10 proper nouns that have been strung together with verses in between them. Jock number 2 is jealous of Jock number 1, and then he almost gets into a car accident with a semi-truck because of it. He's like, I don't need a lecture, but you almost got everybody in the car killed, so I think you do need your personality checked. They fire fireworks at Nonprofit, just because. Brother Lover tempts Nonprofit so that they can go onto his family's lake. She's reaching out the passenger side door of the car in her boyfriend's lap. So they drive up to the lake, they pile out of the vehicle, they get together to move the boat. One of the things that I thought was clever is Nonprofit kind of starts at the front of the boat, and then they're like, you're too weak, you need to get out of the way. And then Jock number 1 takes over, signifying his status as the leader of the group. Brother Lover pulls out her cell phone to let us know that there's no cell service there, so we can cross that criticism off the list. Nonprofit tries to give Brother Lover this amulet of protection that has apparently been passed down from his family, which is just a little bit more evidence that he is completely aware of what the status of the lake is. Badass Grandpa is the harbinger of our story. The character archetype exists mainly to give characters a warning of their impending danger. Usually you incorporate this into horror movies as a way of giving the characters agency over their circumstances. They could have chose not to be there, right? In this movie, though, it's kind of wasted because it goes to Nonprofit, somebody who already knows about the lake monster. Badass Grandpa is worried that the kids aren't going to respect the lake, which I think is a fair assessment considering just minutes ago they shot fireworks at him for literally no reason. He informs Badass Grandpa that they're not going to go swimming, so it's not a big deal. Just keep both of those things in mind. Badass Grandpa is rebuilding his motor. So then they go out onto the lake, they row out there. Nonprofit sees the water moving. You know, his 6th warning that something is probably going to happen. I don't know how many warning signs he actually needs to realize this, but Jock 1 says that they should go in the water, and Nonprofit meekly tries to stop them from doing so. I say meekly because considering that he knows that, probably all of them are going to die, including the one girl that he likes, who he tried to give his amulet of protection to. It seems weird that he doesn't make a more concentrated effort to stop them. They basically just call him a lame and hop in the water anyways. Jock 2 lights some fireworks and then shoots him into the pond, and Nonprofit again doesn't really stop this, considering there are only 2 rules, and he just passively stands by as they break both of them completely unaware. Wrist Filmographer is annoying for a little bit, and then he gets sprayed with a beer can, which is one of the more clever moments in the movie, because it gives a subtle reason for them to talk about how his wristwatch is actually waterproof. The boat gets bumped. It's a jump scare from Jock 1. Nonprofit is kind of a buzzkill. I know that he knows what's going on, but just his passive resistance, even me with full knowledge, I'd be like, yeah man, shut up. There's more swimming, that thing that they weren't gonna do. Like in that vision he had earlier, where they all died. Red Shirt brings up an experience that she and Brother Lover had together that was kind of like a romantic situation in summer camp, which means that Brother Lover is officially romantically connected to, I think, all of the cast. The boat gets bumped as the swimmers are still out there, showing that it's not a Jock 1 jump scare. The lake monster swims under the boat and you see it. It goes in the direction of Jock 1, Brother Lover, and Red Shirt. There's more swimming. Something touched Brother Lover's leg. Not surprising, considering again she's romantically linked to like all the cast. It could have been anybody. They swim against dramatic music as like bubbles pop up. There's some real tension here, but it all goes to like complete waste when they all make it back to the boat safely. Jock 1 and 2 stab at the water with paddles when they don't even know what this thing is. Red Shirt doesn't realize that she's been bitten at first, which is weird because she does know that it was the brachial artery and they have to close it off, but then she dies anyways. She's the only character who makes an intelligent decision, and she immediately dies after making it. Jock number 2 paddles with the paddle in the front of the boat, but everybody on the boat is like, we're just going in circles. It's like they're self-aware of like how bad they all are. Red Shirt drips blood into the water, and now the fish monster has a taste for person. He has a meltdown, but then eventually he's just like, I got it! Mark Wahlberg style. The fish monster bumps the boat. Jock number 2 yells at it some more, which I think it's a good idea that he continues to provoke it in every way that he can. It approaches. Jock number 2 spears the fish monster with the remaining oar, meaning they now have no oars at all. He falls over the boat when he does this, which prompts the fish monster to also bump the boat. Now the boat has a hole in it. Jock number 1 questions Nonprofit about why he brought them out in the first place. He's like, did you know this was going to happen? Were you aware that there was a fish monster? You were freaked out about us swimming. What was that about? He basically says he didn't want this to happen, but I don't know how he saw any other outcome from this set of events. Wrist filmographer decides that they should throw Red Shirt in the water, and that's like his first like train of thought. They don't even consider like looking through their stuff or anything else. You could maybe make a sail out of some clothes, go castaway or something, but he's just like, let's chuck the body in the water and then we'll all paddle for it. They're all for it despite Brother Lover's religious objections. They slowly wait for it to take the bait. It does, slowly. They waste this time not paddling. The fish monster pulls her over and then they start to hand paddle. Wrist filmographer doesn't hand paddle, he just kind of films the fish monster. They start to clear out the bottom of the boat. Jock number 1 is gonna paddle with a cooler lid. Maybe like, wait until you find the cooler lid before you throw the body over. Jock number 1 gets mad at the fish monster and he starts attacking it with a cooler lid, prompting it to eat the cooler lid. Again, from the Mark Wahlberg School of Acting, he goes, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" It's incredible. Favorite part of the movie. Wrist filmographer votes that they should all throw their food into the water. And then they start scattering bags of potato chips across the lake. I don't understand what the plan is here. Like, I could see how this giant fish monster is gonna go for like, a whole person body. But you're really gonna try and satisfy it with the bag of potato chips. And even the potato chips are like right next to the boat, so you're not even gonna be able to paddle away. It's such a terrible idea. And then you're throwing away your only resource of food. I don't know how you could make a worse decision. Jock number 2 starts paddling despite the monster like approaching them. Wrist filmographer is like, the only thing that worked was that time we threw a body off the boat. And then Jock number 2 is like, we don't have any more dead bodies. And he's right, that is a finite resource on that ship, so it was a good call by him. And then wrist filmographer is like, we could throw a live body over. Which at this point, I think we should just get rid of him. He's not helping anybody's decision-making process on this ship. If this was Survivor, we vote that guy out first. I've never seen Survivor, I'm just guessing. Also, he's the most obnoxious character, so he should have gone down first. They put it to a vote. Jock number 2 rightly votes for wrist filmographer. Brother Lover points out that they could do something else, which again is completely correct. They haven't even looked through like their resources on their ship. Then they say that they should all be able to make their case for like why they're each on like the ship. Jocks number 1 and 2 are just like, we're strongest and we'll throw any of you over if you vote for us, pretty much. And they're right, they will do that. Wrist filmographer is really insufferable. He goes on the speech talking about how like none of them are going to amount to anything and their lives are all unimportant. Again, I don't know how he is still on this boat. Nonprofit has nothing to say here. Wrist filmographer just cannot miss a beat for this. And he's like, nice job, nonprofit. When Wrist filmographer gets voted for, he's just like, oh, well, screw you, nonprofit. He says it all passive aggressively, but it's like, dude, you're starting a vote to get this guy thrown off the boat. You know it's pretty likely he's gonna get thrown off the boat. And then it's like, you're gonna act like a jerk on top of that. Like, you might as well have like a little mustache that you twirl as you do this. Nonprofit says, I didn't plan for this, but maybe I should have. Which, again, is a very accurate assessment, considering he could have just completely avoided the entire plot. They paddle some more as Nonprofit is just swimming through the water. Wrist filmographer is even more of a jerk to Brother Lover. He's like, this is a men's conversation. You're a lady. Can't even be partaking in this right now. They decide to light fireworks and shoot them at the lake monster, which it's a good idea, I guess. It seems like it might have been a better idea to, I don't know, wait until you had thrown in the first body so you know where the fish monster's gonna be, and then you could hit it with fireworks. Jock 1 starts to question Brother Lover's relationship with Nonprofit. I think most of her relationships are pretty questionable. They need another distraction. This filmographer realizing that he's quickly going to be the next up to vote. It's like, hey guys, we need to work as a team. Teamwork. They rightly call him on his hypocrisy here when he was the person who pretty much pushed for both bodies to be thrown into the water. Plot twist. It turns out that Brother Lover loves both brothers. Wrist filmographer says that he has it on tape. He goes on a long villain speech about it. They still elect to throw him in the water anyways, and he keeps trying to doggy paddle back to the boat as they keep kicking him. It's one of the coolest shots in the movie. You can see it from the victim's perspective. There's another cool shot that follows this where the fish monster just basically eats him, but again you see it from the camera's perspective. I think this part's really well done. They squabble over their love life some more. I was really not interested in the romantic angle of this movie. Jock 1 laments fondly about parts of Wrist filmographer that we saw and didn't like. He basically just recreates Wrist filmographer's speech where he's like, he was gonna do something with this life. We're all losers. But, you weren't motivated by it then. You shouldn't be motivated by it now. Jock 1 throws the rest of their supplies over. Brilliant decision making. Jock 1 finds an axe and Nonprofit stuff, and then he cuts up the seat of the boat. But they could have done this from the very start of the movie, and then they would have had 2 paddles right after they lost their 2 paddles, back when they still had a bunch of people to row and a dead body to throw over the boat. But, who's keeping track of all that stuff? Jock 2 feeds the cooler to the lake monster. The monster then bites the boat, and Brother Lover just goes psycho on it with an axe. Both brothers love that Brother Lover did this. Nonprofit shows up with the motorboat from earlier that was getting its engine fixed. They're fake nice to him for a little bit so that they can get on his motorboat. He correctly says that he's not letting them on their boat. He'll throw a rope and tow them back to shore. When they're on their boat, they're scheming to get onto his boat. They're like, yeah, our boat's too heavy, and then he'll have to bring us on that one. Which is a level of survivalism that we haven't seen from any of these characters at this point. I mean, granted, they've been throwing live people over, but it just seems especially nefarious and completely unnecessary considering this person is willingly helping you. It takes them a couple of rope throws to get the rope across to them so that they can grab it and tie it in on the front of their boat. The fish monster hears the motorboat and it bumps into it, causing it to spin around. The rope is getting caught around Nonprofit as they just kind of look on. They're arguing about whether or not they should do anything, but again, this person's willing and helping you. If you cut the rope, he's probably just going to throw the rope back. You already threw this guy overboard, and he still came back to help you. So, I just don't understand. They let him get killed by the rope, and just... The boat tips over, and they start trying to pull the rope towards them. The rope hits the fan on the back of the boat, causing that to, stop working. They realize that Nonprofit has an amulet of immunity, and that's why the fish monster isn't eating him. They argue about relationship drama some more, and then we get to our semi-final vote, I guess. There's a lot of back and forth. Brother Lover doesn't really do a good job of manipulating the situation, considering that she's, again, romantically linked to both characters. She acts like a jerk and ends up getting herself thrown overboard. Jock 1 and 2 get into it, they tussle some, and it ends with Jock 2 getting thrown overboard. Jock 1 swims into the water to go grab him, and then swims him most of the way back to shore. As he gets closer to the shoreline, eventually Jock number 2 sees the lake monster behind him. Had he been swimming this time, they probably both could have made it, considering they're pretty close to shore. Regardless, he's like, "This is the final vote," and then kicks him to the lake monster. Then he swims back to the shore. He sees Brother Lover again, and she's wearing the amulet from earlier. They get into a tussle. He ends up drowning her, which made her whole amulet run a little, unimportant in the grand scheme of things. Then we get to the best part of this movie, and I say that completely not sarcastically. I mean that just wholly and genuinely, right? So, Jock number 2 is, happily making it back to shore. He thinks he's found rescue, and he sees lights ahead of him, right? And then who's there, of all people? Badass Grandpa. He's got his shotgun out, and he had found the camera from earlier. And he's like, "Oh, you were Nonprofit's friend, huh? I don't think the lake was done with you yet." It's really brilliant because the camera from earlier cycles back into play at this point. And Badass Grandpa, previously introduced and used as foreshadowing in 2 separate ways, goes off to sort of give the moral repercussions of the way that Jock number 2 has been acting throughout the movie. I also think it's interesting that his inability to recognize his resources contributed to his death again, because had he just grabbed the amulet of protection earlier, just in case, he would have been fine. This movie is like if you broke down because you stabbed your tire, and then you fired your flare gun at your tire instead of the sky. This movie is like an actual float trip, mostly because you're steadily realizing that your friend group doesn't have any coordination or teamwork. This movie is like Lord of the Flies if it started with somebody lighting their house on fire. This movie is like Castaway if Tom Hanks spent the entire runtime stabbing at the water with an oar just to spite King Neptune. This movie is like Hunger Games, but on a boat. This movie is like Jaws if that movie was hit with the shrink ray. Let's break it down. What are my general thoughts and how do I feel like this movie did? I feel like it deserves praise in a lot of aspects. They limited special effects, and containing the plot to a single location is a smart idea. It links to the feeling of isolation, and I think it's a very effective choice. I don't mind Jonah the really big fish. I actually kind of like the uniqueness of it. Although, in retrospect, I think the only time it gives a different element is when they're saying that it's not a shark. I do feel like Beneath squanders a lot of its opportunity with unnecessary mystical elements, as well as bad character writing. The characters provoke the fish monster so much that by the time it eats the third person, you're more so rooting for the fish monster. They throw nearly all of their resources away, including each other, throughout. They consider no other possibilities until half the cast is already dispatched. It's smart writing to put them on a lake. It's not smart writing for the characters to throw away any help available to them and still manage to find it in the same environment. And you don't really need those contrivances when you could have just not given them the resources in the first place. The relationship drama that permeates the second half of the story is completely unnecessary. while at the same time, the real conflict just seems so forced because the characters just keep continually provoking it. Overall, I really wanted to like Beneath, but I just couldn't quite get there. That's been Beneath. Those were some jokes and my thoughts and some other stuff thrown in there. So like, comment, subscribe, and have an awesome day. Constant out.
They're all like yellow and red and black.